It looks like you're someplace warm, Jason. Where are you?
I am not in a warm place, trust me. I'm actually in north or southeastern Pennsylvania, and you're about an hour outside of Philly.
Well, the background really throws me off because it looks like you're maybe like sitting at a poolside cabana or something, or you're like the waterfall's right beside you.
Just artwork.
I've been watching you, not in a creepy way, but been watching you in a very studying sort of way for the last year and a half or so. Ever since I saw you do an interview on Fox. For those who are not initiated with you and what you've been through in your businesses, give us kind of the 30,000-foot Cliff Notes version of your rise and fall and where you are now.
I mean, this is also going to come as a shock to all your viewers. I mean, this is one of those, this gets a little crazy at the very beginning. So I originally was in real estate. I had the intention of becoming like a real estate mogul, and I owned a few properties, but then 2005, 2008, the real estate recession slammed me. And I lost everything. And I'm sure you're aware that most people that are ever successful say that the first aspect of success is failure. You literally have to fail miserably in order to understand how to succeed. When I was in a real estate thing, I basically was losing everything. I mean, it was really, really rough. So I started WTF magazine. And at the very beginning of it, I turned to social media because, of course, social media presents distribution and reach. The more people you can distribute your product to or reach, the more valuable it becomes. Now, that was a very valuable commodity, which Facebook and Twitter and Google and YouTube and so forth offered us, which is what the enticement was to go on there. But I hit a snag that a lot of people were not aware of. But if you Google me, it becomes very apparent. At the beginning of WTF magazine, my first ever celebrity interview, at the end of the night, they asked me for a ride home, and I said yes. And a small fight broke out. When I say a small fight, meaning nobody went to the hospital that night. You know, worst case scenario was a black eye and some bruised egos. But this was Baltimore, Maryland, which is a corrupt city. Now, my involvement in the fight, I simply took out my cell phone and stood like that. That is literally my entire involvement, which of course is constitutionally protected. The next thing you come to find out is the people that were in the fight on the other side, supposedly, their whole family were cops. So they had connections and they had corrupt connections, which what should have been just a misdemeanor, two-sided, argument, everybody pleads the fifth and goes away, turned into a one-sided warrant situation, and then they put a warrant out for my arrest. Even though I was constitutionally protected by what I did, I ended up going and spending 2 months in jail on no bail for attempted murder.
You spent 2 months in jail?
Yep. Facing 2 life sentences, 270 years for standing there taking a cell phone video. I was never in the fight. So I know this sounds like, well, how does this come into like success of marketing and so forth? But the thing was, it lit a massive fire in me. Absolutely pissed off at the criminal, justice system. It was broken. They were using, this should have never happened to me. Realistically, it should have never happened to me. Lawyers have said, shouldn't have happened to me. I didn't have any involvement. So I get out, and now I decide, well, I was going to sue the city. Well, can't sue the city. Lawyers wouldn't. So what do I do next? I have to tell my story. My story needs to be known. That people need to understand that law enforcement is corrupt. That it exists. That you can't do that to somebody. You're wrecking somebody's life because they took a cell phone video. It was bizarre. Well, ultimately, the 2 guys that were in the fight ended up with misdemeanors. It wasn't even a felony. Like, it was so bizarre when a normal judge got to it. They were like, no. So I started building an audience in 2011, right? Because this whole thing happened in 2011. But I realized that I needed reach and distribution to be able to sell my product, which would be my message to the world about this police corruption thing. So I started building very, very aggressively. Like, I was sucking up pages everywhere I could. Nobody even understood the value of a Facebook page back then. And here I am, I'm building multi-million fan pages. I had lost more fans by 2012 because of Facebook than most people ever had in their lives. It's that large, right?
What was your peak? How many Facebook fans do you have?
By 2012, early 2012, I had 9 million fans at least. I had probably between 9 and 14 million fans. Okay. Now, the thing is that by 2014, Facebook had caught on and decided to stop me. I did peak at 25 million, but if you consider the graph going, up, and then it was because Facebook had basically stopped me from growing in a path that I was growing. Okay. So yes, I peaked at 25 million fans. Technically, with my partnerships now, we have 39 million fans. But the reality is if they had never interfered with me, I would be in the hundreds of millions of fans. At one time, my one page was ranked number 5 in the world. My audience was actually larger cumulatively than BuzzFeed. But nobody had ever heard who I was. And that was by design. The thing was that I never wanted to be a talking head. I never wanted to be the famous guy. I simply wanted to run this massive distribution network in order to tell my story. Now, the interesting thing is that do you ever happen to remember the police corruption trend? That whole thing, 2014, 2015?
Oh, yeah. Awful.
Now, let's put this together. There's a guy that got into social media that wanted to bring the police corruption trend to the forefront, that had a massive social media audience that never wanted to be famous. You understanding how this works?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
National trends can be affected by mass audience because what you're doing is it's amplification of message. I wouldn't go out there and say, cops are corrupt and they're bad, because I'd end up with 2 bullets in the back of my head in a ditch.
Sure.
So what I would do is I would find a guy like Tim Burton over here, and he would say, oh, well, these cops are bad. And I go, oh, I need to put you out to my entire massive audience. And all of a sudden, as a media guy, right, and you're doing stories that get maybe, say, like 1,000 views a month, and all of a sudden one gets 700,000 views, what would you do a story on again?
The same thing.
Right. You would start to do more. Well, that's what I did, is I was amplifying the message of all the different media companies that were out there that were doing anything negative on, and it's not against cops. I mean, I have no problem with cops at all. I would totally stand by them. It's the corruption. We have to gut it out. Absolutely. Which realistically reset the entire nation to realize our government, our law enforcement, our, the legislative branches, they're all corrupt. We need to gut that out. Well, that ushered in the whole thing for Donald Trump.
You probably never thought that you would be the linchpin of something this massive. Does anybody ever get up and think, I'm going to be the one person to change the world in this facet? No, nobody really thinks that. But yet here, you were just kind of thrown in the reluctant hero, I guess.
It's funny because it comes back to that quote, if not me, who, and if not when, or if not now, when.
Yeah, right.
I just simply did this out of necessity, not because of goals. I mean, I didn't get into social media thinking to myself, oh, I want to be a social media millionaire. I went out there sitting there going, I have something that needs to be told. And I built an audience, and that audience turned into something that was a massive business. I mean, we were doing over $300,000 a month in 2013, when most people hadn't even figured this out yet. And people that are now making, big money sit there and they say to me, well, yeah, man, like you should have stayed with it. I couldn't. They interfered with me deliberately because I was doing too much back then. Think of what it would be now.
Oh, you'd be off the charts. You'd be off the charts. When you were doing in 2013, you were doing $300,000 a month. Was it just you, or did you have a team around you?
I had, I believe, at the time, between 7 and 9 employees, give or take. It was a very, very small team. I mean, this thing was a massive cash cow because I had gained what is called a prospective economic advantage, meaning I had already gained millions of people that I could distribute to. And the thing was, and this is where everybody's got to understand what they're dealing with now with social media, is this distribution, right, is key. And companies like Facebook and Twitter and Google, specifically like YouTube and so forth, they prey on the fact that, we're going to get them in through our content. And now what they want to do is leverage that. So the organic reach that I had built myself, like I had built it, an economic advantage, they had to encroach upon that. They needed to take that back. So the business model of Facebook changed. This advertising business model is very, very interesting, Tim, because you were asking me earlier about, well, what should we tell our fans and so forth about, investing into marketing online and so forth. And I would warn everyone. I built this. I built my own audience. I didn't have any help. I didn't pay for my audience, which is interesting, right? A lot of guys like, I spent $300,000 on an audience. I didn't spend anything.
Gee.
Why? Because I was good at it, right? And the thing is that organic reach had no value to the social media companies, right? Like Facebook. Organic reach is useless. So what they did was they had to figure out a way to leverage that organic reach. And you know how like most sites have like, an ad on the side and so forth, and they call it, spammy looking or whatever you want to call it. The reason being is because that's not interfering with the content. Okay. The content is what draws somebody to a website. The ads are essentially an addition. Now, if you had a website that was purely ads, would anybody come to it?
No. Yeah, actually, the only one, there's only one that I can think of right off the top of my head, and it's simply because of timing that we're doing this interview. Is it blackfriday.net, bfads.net, the Black Friday ads? That's it.
You're right. There would be like on television, what are they called? Like the
HSN or the home exactly. Shopping.
Now that circumstance is a little different because you're literally, it is a sales network. But outside of that, all other websites, they put out content, something that is interesting, and therefore you sell an ad on the side.
Correct.
Well, Facebook had this brilliant idea. Well, we're going to stick it in the news feed.
Yeah.
But guess what happens? That news feed has a finite amount of space, right? Well, if they're going to put something in, and they've actually acknowledged this, Tessa Lyons said, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I'm going to synopsize it. More content must displace the content of publishers on other pages. So in other words, Facebook said, we're going to have you all build your distribution networks. And then once you're in here, we're going to flip the game on you, and we're going to take you out of the newsfeed and displace you with our content that we are paid to produce. This comes to the premise of what my lawsuit is about. Now, for those that are seeing me for the first time on your show, I have a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against Facebook, which could change the world. Because the premise that we're trying to go, to make it put across to the courts is that Facebook's organic reach had to be devalued in order to increase the paid reach value. So they started tortiously interfering with everyone. This isn't even politics. It's simply, if you're on Facebook, we need to get you off Facebook so that we can stick our stuff in Facebook.
I'm so glad you said that, because I have said in my seminars when I go speak, there was a guy from Google, a Google rep, who admitted on camera that they change their algorithm twice a day on average. And I've told business owners, if you're going to advertise on social media or digital platforms at all, anywhere, it is an incredibly risky game, because they can move the goalposts on you anytime they want, and they do, and they will. And here's the worst part of it. They don't have to tell you. There's no note. You don't get an email saying, by the way, did you know now that we changed this and we've devalued that and we've given more weight to this? You don't get those emails.
What they also do is not only do they move the goalpost, but, I literally know people, and there's a class action that's building right now around people that went in and they said, okay, well, we're going to buy likes from Facebook. I know somebody who spent almost $300,000, right? Built an entire audience. And then after they had spent the $300,000 in audience, they wiped out their reach completely. They reach less people now than when they started paying Facebook, which is completely a consumer fraud issue, because that has nothing to do with the objectionable content, which is the Communications Decency Act protection. This has to do with simply, hey, look, we offered you something, and then we devalued it after you stopped paying us. That's consumer fraud.
The one term that pops into my head it's a bait and switch.
Yes, it's bait and switch, and they went from an organic model to a pay to play. That's how they did it. They said they offered us all reach and distribution, a place for all ideas. Come on, build your network, get connected. Well, the implication there is connected to each other. No, connected to the site is all they cared about.
Right.
And then once those connections were made and they didn't need any more people, they simply leveraged those connections, and now it became pay to play. If that was originally their model, I would say, okay, well, then they should be able to do that, pay to play, right? But It wasn't. That's not what they offered us. That's where the fraud comes in.
Exactly.
You offered us a distribution, and now you're leveraging and stealing that distribution through fraudulent means in order to extort us. These are all the principles of my lawsuit.
Yeah.
In order to unfairly compete, because when Facebook, and this is something that I think your audience will, and this is the key piece that will actually stop all of these companies, is what's called Communications Decency Act, Section 230, and everybody's heard of C1 and C2A. But very few people have heard of F3.
Right.
the definition of an information content provider. And I'm going to tell a couple things on your show that have literally never been said before, but are the key piece that bringing all this apart, like pull it all apart. So let me give, and this will be a little technical, so some of your audience may not be able to follow, but I'm going to try and make this fairly simple, okay?
Lay it out for us, man.
F3 is the definition of an information content provider. Always saying, are you a publisher or are you a platform? It's irrelevant. They're both. Let's get rid of those words. Now let's talk about a service provider and an information content provider. Those are the two key pieces because they have legal definitions. F3 as information content provider is any person or entity who is responsible in whole or in part for the creation or development of information provided on the internet. Now let's take out the pieces we don't really need because every word is important in law, so every word can stand alone, okay? So any entity, Facebook's an entity, that is responsible in part for the development of information. They didn't have to create it. Now, do you know what the word development means? I mean, everybody sort of does, but let me give you the actual definition. To promote the growth of, to increase the activity of.
In social media speak, that would be
reach and distribution. Exactly.
Reach and distribution. Yeah.
So now let me give you a couple quotes from Facebook. So I'm going to start to pull this apart. If it says sponsored, it means somebody spent money to increase its distribution. Well, increasing the distribution is the development of information. Therefore, Facebook is taking money to increase the distribution. So now the question comes down to the courts going, does that make them responsible or is it just part of the business platform? Okay, let's go a step further. Mark Zuckerberg said in front of Congress, advertisers tell us who they want to reach and we do the placement. The organizational prioritization of information that's provided on the internet is the responsibility now of Facebook. And what do? Professor Lyons said, more content must displace other publishers and pages. So therefore, Facebook is taking responsibility for the organizational placement and development of information, displacing its own users. But why do they do that? I'm going to give you a quote that cinches this thing. So going after actors and domains who repeatedly share this kind of content. Now, think about that for a second, Tim. You got to pull these apart carefully.
Sure.
I didn't say I was going after objectionable content, did I?
Nope, you did not.
I said I was going after the actors,
correct,
the people and the domains, the websites. So I'm going after people and domains, which has nothing to do with the Communications Decency Act. You're allowed to restrict access to materials that are considered objectionable. But you're not allowed to go after the individual, right?
Right.
Who repeatedly share this kind of content and reducing their distribution. Now I've conflated this with pulling their distribution, which would then fall under C2A, but I'm saying going after people and removing their ability to monetize, removing their ability to advertise is part of our strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. They just said that the reduction of distribution has the intent to remove monetization and advertising. You know the definition of tortious interference? Intentionally damaging third-party business relationships and contractual relationships in order to cause economic harm.
Right.
That's literally what they just said. And Facebook, in their response to me recently, said, well, these conspiracy theories and long block quotes. It's not a conspiracy if it literally admitted it's your strategy. You tortiously interfere with content in order to displace it with content you are legally responsible for as an information content provider. And if the courts recognize it, it means their entire business advertising model is illegal.
If you're successful in court, what do you predict will happen? Well, nobody can predict what will happen, but what would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see the court sanction them and force them to pull their advertising business model and make them put the ads on the side like every other company that doesn't interfere with its own users. They offered everybody something. And as far as I'm concerned, Facebook can shut down. I don't really care. Like the world would be a better place, I think, without it at this point, because it really is doing things that nobody was expecting.
Yeah.
But the control of information, the dissemination of information by one site, by an elite company, could thwart the government. It's more powerful than the government at this point.
Yeah, we've seen this with Google and other, Twitter saying they're not going to take political ads. Now, is your main beef just with Facebook, or is it with kind of the big heavyweights of the digital world?
My beef is is obviously with Facebook, because that's where I built my empire of fans. I mean, I was stunted. My growth was stunted. I mean, I was bigger than BuzzFeed at one point. Jeez. So when you look at damages, it's very easy to draw a straight line and go, well, if I was bigger than BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed is valued at $1.7 billion. Where do you think I'd be right now without any of the stunting of my growth? So yes, my argument is directly with Facebook. However, this same principle of, hey, we're protected by the Communications Decency Act, so we can do anything we so choose to do, violate the laws, tortiously interfere, affect elections, tampering with, governments. We can do whatever we want. Are we out of our minds? That is not what the Communications Decency Act, do you know what it was intended to do? It was for the proliferation of information on the internet and to protect children from harmful content. Yeah, it was literally meant to protect sites so that more people could survive, more people can make money, and kids didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And is that what it's being used for? No.
And it's morphed. Yeah, you're right. It's morphed into this unrecognizable, 9-headed hydra. And how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube? Thank God for people like you to stand up for this. If a lot of business owners and media reps watch this program, and what would you say to them? If they're a client or they have a client, it's like, well, I'm going to put all my money on Facebook, or I'm going to put all my money in digital. What would you say to them?
That if you are planning on doing that, and you have a website saying, this is direct quotes, we are putting out there trusted sources. They're saying that they're actually showing content based upon what their values are, not what is just a neutral hosting. That value makes them developers of that information, saying it's a trusted source, authentic. If it's fake news, whatever, those decisions to push certain companies forward, like CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all of it. Again, it's not even the political spectrum. It's simply elite companies are being considered trusted sources. If you're not one of those companies and you're going to spend money, well, my friend spent $300,000 on advertising. And then as soon as he was done spending that advertising, guess what happened? Gone. There is no survivability. I try to liken it to building yourself. There are some amazing views on the side of a mountain, and everybody's going to build their mansions on the side of the mountain. And I built mine near the top. I had the best view ever. Then I figured out that the mountain was actually a volcano, and it blew my house away. And then just sit there and say to anybody, you should totally build your house on the side of this mountain. Well, there's lava flows going everywhere right now. And not only that, but it's not even like it flows downhill in a straight line. Right. Facebook's just changing the direction to hit certain houses as it goes.
Where it goes straight up and comes up through your floor and completely wrecks everything you've got.
I don't think that it's a good investment to go into a unstable platform that, they're lying to the world saying, oh, well, build your business here so that we can wipe you out when we don't need you anymore. They've literally said, if you're not a valuable participant. So if you're not valuable to them, you're gone.
Or if you make one misstep, you say one thing wrong, or you post something that they don't like, and they can shut you down just like that.
Or Tim, if you don't say something wrong, you literally don't even have to say something wrong, and they will still hit you with a misstep. I've seen things where it comes back as spam. Well, this is an interesting one. Oh, this is a really good one. So a friend of mine got banned on 47 pages he was an admin on, right? And he basically worked as a conglomerate. He was working with a whole lot of different pages. And he got banned for sharing to pages that he owns, that he's on, right? He got banned for sharing too much. And do you know what Facebook's reasoning was? Because sharing that much might mean that he is financially incentivized to do so.
Oh, geez.
So they banned him for making money. Remember tortious interference?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you make money on Facebook and Facebook doesn't make money on Facebook, you are no longer a valuable participant and you're gone. So the whole idea of organic reach or come build your business, yeah, forget it. It's gone.
Yeah, it's not what they've led us to believe for,
Well, as a matter of fact, I have a meeting out with All Social. It's a new app. Actually, it's not even that new. They have over 100,000 users already. Because a lot of people ask me, they're like, well, where do we go then? Like this becomes like a very big question. And I've struggled with the same question because they're like, where would you go? And the problem is it's the growing pains that any one of these sites have. The first problem obviously is that where do you go if there's nobody there? I've looked at a lot of these other sites, and one, they're not financially backed well enough. But this new one, I really haven't gotten into it deep, but I'm curious and I'm hopeful for it. It's called All Social. It is, and I don't even know if they want me to say who, but it is backed by a billionaire. This is the biggest. The key piece here is that it has to be well enough funded that they can bring all of the right people in order to really challenge the system. That's the only way it's going to work. And when you tell me that you've got $100,000 budget to build a social network, I'm just laughing at you.
Yeah,
like,
that's peanuts. Oh, it's beyond enterprise level. Is that
correct.
allsocial.com? Do you know the website there? We can send people.
I don't even know if they have a website yet. I mean, I'm going out there to basically consult with them. I wanted to figure out who I was going to put my hat in the ring with, because I got to find the right setup, because everybody comes in and they think they're just going to build a social network and they run into problems. Like, for example, and I don't want to say which app, but an app, I was in there probably in the first 600 people on the site. I got on there and I started saying, hey, look, there's some problems. You might want to handle these things. And even their own people were like, you need to listen to this guy. Like, he does this stuff. They didn't. And one of the problems I would have told them is that you have to isolate it. And here's just a thing. If somebody's building a social network, heed my warning. You need to be able to isolate by country. The reason being is because this app came along, and then all of a sudden somebody from Saudi Arabia is like, woo, I like this. So they put it out to all of their people. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, they started getting tens of thousands of Saudi Arabians joining the site, which overwhelmed it now. Now the whole thing is all, Middle Eastern. And it's one of those things that, like, I got nothing against Middle Eastern, but if it's 90% Middle Eastern, you just wiped out the American market. They're not going to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if it blows up in India, other side of the planet, we're not there.
Can you imagine, like, a girl gets on, like, we had a real problem with this in social media early on, is like the models, like I work with a lot of the models that are on there and some of these Instagram models, and the Indians, they just have a different ideal than the Americans. Like, and they're bizarre. Like, some of the messages, and it gets overwhelming. Well, if that's like 90% of the site, there's no girl that's going to join it.
No.
And it's, these are gross representations, but it's kind of one of those things that these are problems you have to head off at the pass before you even start. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But I'm interested to see how it goes. It's All Social on the app stores.
Fair enough. You have a book that you've just released. Tell us about it.
Well, okay, so I haven't released it just yet.
Okay, you have a book that you're about to release. How about that?
Yes, my first book is called Social Justice. That actually goes through the episode that I had with Baltimore, how I started to build the social media network, and the fight that I really had there for my life. I mean, I've really gone to the bottom. I've been at the edge of suicide before, where everything was destroyed in my life. I had no idea how to survive it. And when you hit the bottom, you realize now the thing now is that now I can survive anything. Like, stress is nothing like what I used to have, right? So I'm a very happy person, just in case anybody wants to know, because I am challenging some of the biggest companies in the world. I don't really feel like Epsteining this. So anyhow, the point, so Social Justice is my first book, and I probably should have had it here, but I don't.
That's
my second book, which is called Social Reform, is after I had eaten the charges and so forth. That was when I got into social media, and that chronicles how I built my social media audience and the things that we did, and some of the more famous things. Like, here's a funny story for you. Do you remember when Morgan Freeman died but didn't die? It was a hoax way back in like 2012.
Oh, yeah.
It went all through the news.
Yeah.
Okay. So that one, a lot of people recognize it because literally the mainstream media was even reporting it because they just didn't realize that fake news could exist even back then. Ironically, it wasn't meant to be fake news. It was a joke. I was sitting at the bar with a friend of mine, and we had been drinking fairly heavily, and I was laughing, and I said to him, I said, man, I can do anything with social media. And he said, well, you can't kill God. So I grabbed the picture of Morgan Freeman playing God and Bruce Almighty, and I said that creator of the heavens and the earth from the dawn of time till 2012, rest in peace. And I shared it across my entire network, which was like, I don't know, 9 or so million fans. And all of a sudden, everybody saw it everywhere. So they thought it was real. And people didn't verify it. And they just started reporting it everywhere because they wanted to be the forefront of the news without actually checking to see whether it was real. Oops. That's all I can say, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't meant with any malintent. It was just a joke, you know? I mean, I thought they would get the creator of the heavens and the earth from the dawn of time till 2012, you know?
You know, it's the same thing. Have you seen, I just did a recent video about this, the South Dakota ad, meth, we're on it. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that.
This is it's a drug awareness campaign. Apparently there's a big problem with meth in South Dakota. I used to live there for back in the day. And it's where I started my radio career, actually. And they did this campaign, and it's a picture. It's a picture of the state, and inside the picture it says meth. We're on it. Full stop. That's all everybody is seeing, and so they're taking it to say South Dakota is admitting that they're on meth. No, what you have to go deeper and read the headline or beyond the headline, and the point of the thing is, we know we have a meth problem. We're on it. Like, we're on the case, but everybody's roasting them saying, oh, everybody in South Dakota is on meth. Same thing. It's just a smaller scale, but yes, that's how these death hoaxes started. So you're the perpetrator of that. So good job, Jason.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just, realistically, when you're doing this job, you come to realize that you have to cater to the lowest common denominator of people. People aren't really that smart, to be honest with you, like in general. And I noticed this, and because I always had a problem with like things like Jersey Shore, and like, because I never watched that stuff. I couldn't take it. You know, it's
God, amen.
You know,
Me too.
More power to it. I'm not saying it was like a bad show or anything else like that, but I just can't deal with the stupidity of it. I like intelligent things personally, and what I realized in doing the audience that I had was really a big cross section of the United States. I mean, we're talking about massive numbers of people that I was reaching, and I would do an intellectual joke, which I think was brilliant, and it would die. It would go nowhere. But you do like poop and fart jokes, and everybody, and it blows up, and it's one of those, and unfortunately, that's what we're catering to, and then we're slipping down a very dangerous slope with this whole thing, because you know, like, for example, remember that show Boston Legal?
Yeah, I never watched it, but I'm familiar with it.
Brilliant show. Literally one of the funniest, smartest, well-written shows I've ever seen. I watched it religiously, and it was because it was an intellectually intriguing show. The audience was in their 50s and 60s. They shut the show down, being the highest ranked show. They shut it down because it wasn't the demographic they wanted to cater to.
It's not the money demo.
And you go, okay, instead of bringing people up, we're bringing them down.
Yeah.
That's the problem we have right now. And that I think is what we really have to deal with the social media stuff, is we have to think about who are we catering to and how. But we'll see.
Yeah, one of the things I always say is in the age of the smartphone, being dumb is a choice. And if you just choose to just look at the headlines and not go deeper, I can't help you. Jason can't help you. You know, and you've got to do your own research and not just live in an echo chamber. What's that?
I said, you can't help him, I can't help him, and Facebook calls it clickbait.
That's absolutely right.
Wait, you mean the headline that's sensational? I mean, do you realize how ludicrous that is? They're saying that clickbait is a sensational headline. That's literally the definition of what a headline is supposed to be, a sensational tagline in order to intrigue people to bring them in.
Exactly.
Like, extra, read all about it.
It's the news. Yeah, it's the newspaper model. It's the old sales letter model. If the headline is stupid, you're not going to read it.
Right. But all that was a pretext in order to control headlines that they don't like. You have to understand everything that they do, every rule that they have, and this is what we're trying to get across to the people. Nothing that they have said is true. Nothing. So clickbait comes down to they have a subjective, arbitrary rule set that they can apply indiscriminately or selectively against anybody they don't want, call it clickbait. And I've actually seen this, believe it or not. It was, what was it? I believe it was like a CNN headline, and somebody had the exact same headline quoting what CNN said, and they called it clickbait. Literally a quote of what was said. How is it clickbait? You know what they'll say? It's a mistake. We'll try to do better.
When is this going to court?
So as of right now, the Northern District basically just didn't even touch our case. They cut and paste what Facebook said. They vacated oral arguments and they moved it on because they just really didn't spend any time looking at it. And we kind of knew that was kind of going to be the case. We immediately filed an appeal in the Ninth Circuit Court because we actually need to be in the Ninth in order to undo some of the problems that have been done. It's kind of complicated, but essentially Facebook and other social media companies have been getting C2A immunity in C1 fought cases, meaning I'm fighting A, but they're getting B as a dismissal. And the problem is that now A means B in the eyes of the court. And we got to go, no, A and B can't be the same thing. This law cannot mean the same as another. It's called surplusage. You essentially can't have two laws meaning the exact same thing because that's not the way laws are written. It's called the canons of statutory construction. Sorry, I'm getting a little technical now.
Oh, so no, this is fascinating. I'd never heard that before. I didn't know that actually was a thing.
Okay, so here is the complication, and this is something that I haven't really talked about because it will be very technical. Only a very few people will understand this. C1 says that no provider of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of the content of another. Okay, so what they're saying there is that they didn't speak it, they didn't publish it, therefore they're not responsible for it as a liability. Meaning, if I post something on there about you and it's derogatory, you can't hold the platform responsible, the service provider responsible for what I did. It's another.
Sure. The
implication there is it's a third-party lawsuit. They have actually modified this into any other instead of another. And every word's important because I'm not suing. I can't even sue Facebook for the content of another because it's my own content I'm suing about. So there is no another in that circumstance. But the problem has been that the courts, several different courts, have found that Facebook as a publisher is able to edit, make decisions about what to remove and what to remain. And that is what they put as C1 and gave them dismissal. Where in there does it say decisions about what to remove? Where in there does it say that they can take any action at all? C1, we realized, and this is something that is going to be coming out, it hasn't even been brought forth yet, is C1, the implication of C1 is that it is the inactivity, the inaction. It is if Facebook or Google or Twitter doesn't mess with something. They go, okay, you can we'll passively post it, but we didn't create it, we didn't post it, we didn't publish it, we didn't do anything, hands off. That's what C1 was supposed to originally mean. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that has turned into they're allowed to actively invest themselves into modifying, removal, and so forth. That's not what C1 ever meant. And so the problem is that's the function of C2A.
So this is basically when you're saying, or if I understand you correctly, if I'm following you correctly, when you post something and Facebook says, oh, sorry, this goes against our community guidelines or something like that, and they remove the post.
Right. They're saying, well, we didn't publish it, we didn't speak it, so we can do whatever we want. So Facebook just removed it. And that's what they're saying C1 protects. But now this is where it starts to get into the surplusage aspect. C2A says any action taken by an interactive computer service to restrict access to or availability of materials that are considered, lewd, lascivious, harassing, or otherwise objectionable content, even if constitutionally protected, if this is done in good faith. Okay, so the measure of good faith is they're putting a measure of good faith in there so that they're saying, well, if you are going to pull stuff off, it at least be done in good faith that it was objectionable content.
Oh,
well, if you're removing content under C1 and you're protected, and you're removing content under C2 as protected, that's the same thing. That's surplusage. They don't write laws that way. The two laws are independent. That's the legislative construction of these laws, okay? So what we have to do in court is we have to get the ninth to recognize that C1 can't be what C2A is. And the other night, I had this kind of epiphany of how exactly this explains out. And believe it or not, it was a Hooters waitress. As we were talking about this, I was explaining it with a friend of mine, and she said, wow, it's like being a good Samaritan. And all of a sudden it clicked. I realized that C1 and C2A fall under what's called protections for good Samaritan, blocking and screening of offensive materials, right? And all of a sudden I realized, good Samaritan. Good Samaritan laws are very simple. If you do nothing, inaction, omission, you don't do anything, you're not liable for something. Meaning if somebody's hurt, you don't have to do anything, you're not liable.
Right.
Or if you try to help in good faith, they can't sue you under Good Samaritan laws because they're saying, well, you made a good faith effort to help, to remove
if it
them
goes sour, yeah.
You know, oh, they bumped their knee on the way out of the car. They can't sue you for the bumped knee because you're trying to save their life, right? That's the idea of a Good Samaritan law. But if you drive past, morally it's inept, but you're not liable for what happened to them anyhow. Now, the third thing being is, what if you walk up and dump gasoline on the fire? That, sir, is the development of the problem. Development under F3, which is why C1 and C2 fall under Good Samaritan, meaning it's inaction or action, inaction being C1, action being C2, and if it is the advancement or development of, it no longer is under Good Samaritan, it falls under the definition of a content provider, meaning they're themselves involved, they're responsible in part for it. So if we get the Ninth Circuit to recognize that C1 is an inaction, well, you can't use that ever again for policing or whatever. No, it's saying like if you didn't make it, you didn't produce it, you didn't publish, you didn't speak it, you're not responsible for it. Okay, it's cool. That's not what I'm suing them for. I'm suing them for the actions they took against my pages, the actions to remove, the actions to restore, the actions to redistribute my value, the actions that they did to conspire with my competitor to own what I had. They literally worked with my competitor to buy me out.
Yeah, and when you had, what was it, 25 million, 39 million, millions of fans. When they had
25 million fans, they shut down 14 million overnight.
So you lost 9 million people just like that.
14 million.
Or 14 million, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 14 million overnight. And see, the thing is that under that, they would say, okay, well, we're protected against objectionable material, meaning I violated some rule, the CDA, C2A, protects them because that's for the removal of content. They didn't argue C2A because the good faith measure. They don't want to put it to a good faith measure because I can prove it was bad faith. Prove beyond any doubt because they restore the exact same content. So what they did was they fell back on the C1 argument because C1 has been conflated with the same process as C2A in surplusage. The two can't mean the same damn thing.
Sure. So
what happens is that we have to untwist the C1 and get the courts to recognize that, no, this has nothing to do with it. It doesn't have to do with, hey, we didn't create it, so we don't have any responsibility. It means I'm not suing them as the publisher. I didn't say they spoke it or published it or created it. I did. It's my own content. You understand?
Yeah.
So if they had taken no action, they would have been no responsible. But they took action. So therefore, that goes under C2A. And we're saying they didn't just remove, they developed my information for my competitor. Okay? Remember what I was saying about advertisers?
Yeah.
Tell us who they want to reach, and we do the placement. That's the development for your competitor, Tim. They're taking money to develop the information who is a direct competitor to you, to tortiously interfere and wipe you out in order to replace you with content they are responsible in part for. They have no CDA immunity.
When do you think this whole trial thing's going to wrap up? Has it started, or where are you in the process?
So we're in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals right now. We've already put in our appellate brief. Facebook just responded, I think, 3 or 4 days ago. To a December 9th, we have a counter response that we're allowed, which we will have in before December 9th. And then it is a waiting game. It all depends on the 9th. The 9th may speed up the process because our argument is literally pivotal to the entire world right now. Like, the CDA argument has been so messed up. that it needs to be fixed and they need to pay attention to it because it is very important to the whole nation that they're abusing the CDA. But it could be a year, it might be a few months, I don't know. But once the ninth renders a decision, that will be a precedential decision. It will either really entrench this problem or they will fix it because it was never right in the first place. They messed it all up in the courts, and the ninth, I'm hoping they come through because everybody says, oh, the ninth doesn't go. This isn't a political argument. It has nothing to do with liberal or conservatives. It has to do with unfair competition, with one company dominating the entire free market and tortuously interfering with anybody. That's illegal. You can't do it that way.
If Facebook, if you win this, let's just say you win this suit against Facebook, how soon do you think the rest of the dominoes are going to fall with Twitter, Google, and all? There are over 1,000 social media networks on this planet right now. Do you think that's, if you can, basically chop off the head of the snake, do you think they're all going to fall in line on their own volition, or some are going to hold out and have to be forced into this if they're doing what Facebook does?
Well, okay, so if I set this precedent, right, that C1 is supposed to be essentially in inaction, C2 is the actions taken, then what happens is that people can go in and actually sue based upon the merits of good faith. Merits of good faith has to be put to trial, not at dismissal stage. You don't make that decision at dismissal. But what I'm doing is that I forget how many attorney generals are involved, but that antitrust case, I'm essentially cutting a path. I hate to use it because it's so cliche, but the tip of the spear issue.
Sure.
All I have to do is pierce their armor. I have to get through the CDA. I have to put a hole in it. Once I do, the rest of the shaft of the spear comes through, which is the antitrust case and so forth. The same precedent will be able to be used. I mean, this is virtually the Roe versus Wade of social media. It's a pivotal decision that will make it either the CDA. There's only two real meanings here, and this is just kind of an overview. If they are successful in getting this, now we will go to the Supreme Court. Like the ninth, we won't stop there. So I'm hoping the ninth does the right thing because otherwise it's going to take even longer. But it's a pivotal decision here. If the CDA is being used the way it is and it continues to be used that way and the Ninth Circuit locks this in, it effectively means that the CDA is protection to do anything it wants illegally. They are allowing these elite companies to break the law however they so choose, at will, because of a law that allows them to do publishing and editing. That is not the intentions of the CDA. It was not the legislative intention. It was for the proliferation of the market, not to stifle the market. So, but if we are successful, what happens is that we put them back to the measure of what the CDA was originally intended for, which was, if we didn't post it, we didn't create it, we're not responsible for it, we didn't do it, we didn't publish it, we didn't speak it. Or if we're going to take action against you, it has to be put to a measure of good faith. We can restrict it if we consider it to be objectionable, and we can remove it if it's not in good faith because you don't happen to like the right candidate, or you don't happen to like, whatever it be. Yeah. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's not really objectionable under what the intent was, which was to be for the protection of children from harm, then it's put to a test of measure of good faith. The third thing being is if Facebook is in fact developing companies like CNN being the highest rated Facebook page, but yet lowest on the Nielsen rating, you have to ask yourself, how are they doing that unless they're being developed? Yeah, and if they're being developed, that content is superseding me because Facebook is choosing to, then it is responsible for that, and I can hold them liable. I open them up to the largest class action. But Tim, most people don't even know this. About 2 months ago, because I'm sitting here saying, I'm opening up to a class action suit. Well, I don't know if I am. Do you know why? Do you know if Facebook changed its terms of service quietly and the news never even reported it? You can now only you can't sue them. You can't join a class action. You have to go through AAA arbitration. They changed it. Why do you think they changed it, Tim?
Well, it wouldn't have anything to do with Jason Fike. I mean, come on.
They know that they're in trouble. They know that it's coming. And if everybody in the world could just simply join one class action, it would effectively be $1 trillion lawsuit for the losses of the entire nation. and it would close the doors. They know that they're in trouble.
No doubt.
And unfortunately, they put themselves there because some people say, well, then the ninth isn't going to undo this because it's so dangerous and it would hurt these companies. These companies have hurt everyone. Literally everyone. Like nobody should feel sorry for this company.
No doubt.
They've hurt everyone.
I have a client that we had really massive success back in 2017 with an ad campaign, and we reran the same 1.7 million views on this one video, and spent a little bit of money on it, in the grand scheme of things. And we ran the same thing about a year later, and nothing happened. And it's because they've changed. They like we talked about, they move the goalposts. And as a marketer, I sit there and go, what the hell is going on? Why are you doing this? It makes it hard for everybody, but we'll see what
they're claiming under C2A. It's objectionable content. That's the thing, is they're getting protections under C2A. It was not objectionable when you paid for it, but then all of a sudden think about this. Now that you're not paying for it, now it's objectionable. They're protected under C2A, which they are theoretically, but the thing is that because the courts won't let it go to the test of good faith. And the problem there is that if you went after them like I have for suing them, right, they're then saying C1 is protecting them. Well, they're saying, but they literally said that C1 is in its entirety our ability to publish, edit, choose, and remove content. Well, that's the point of C2. That you can choose to take something down or not under C2, and C1 is only, meaning whatever your content was that you shared, I couldn't sue them for what you said. That's C1. They've manipulated and misunderstood and misrepresented and misapplied this law, and we have to fix that.
And reinterpret.
That's what our implications are.
Yeah.
So now what happens is that if they do what they just did to you, which is kill it on the second end, you go, well, wait a second. It wasn't objectionable when you took money. Why is it objectionable now?
Yeah.
Let's put this to the test of good faith.
And that's exactly
level the playing field.
That's pretty much what went through my head when I saw the numbers come back, and I go, "What the hell is going on here?"
Yeah, what changed?
Yeah, this new book, Social Justice was your first one.
Social Justice is currently out. Social Reform I can't release it until my case lays out because it just I can't. Let's put it that way. Lawyer said just hold on to it for now because we just don't want to give them anything more than we need to.
All right, so let's do this. Go out and pick up a copy of Social Justice, and we will keep our eyes peeled and listen for an announcement from you when we can get our hands on Social Reform. And where can you
look
get
at All Social? Look at All Social too. I'm curious to see what All Social does.
Oh yes,
I would give them. I'm not even involved yet with them, but I would say that I've looked at it, and it's interesting because their basic principles are: you will reach everybody that you have as your audience. They will be able to see you. We will not interfere. And that is the biggest principle. If you build your business on there, you maintain your business on there, we won't take it from you. I like that idea.
Wasn't that what we were pulled in with Facebook like we were talking about before? That's how Facebook lured us all in.
Correct. That's the bait and switch right there. They said, build your business. Except they didn't say that, we're going to take your business from you and then monetize it for ourselves and then mess you up and wipe you out.
Right. It was never posted as build your business to a point. And we'll decide what that point is and keep moving the goalposts.
Or better yet, to build our business and then I'm going to take yours away from you.
Yeah, there's that too. And Jason Fike, I wish you nothing but the best and wish you continued success in this lawsuit thing. And everybody, if you own a business, if you don't own a business, if you market, if you don't market, you should be paying attention to this guy and this lawsuit because this literally could change the world. Jason Fike, where can we follow news about this? Are you a website? I would ask you for a Facebook page.
Ironically, it's like, I'm on social media. Like I said, the mainstream media doesn't want to work with me. I mean, they don't really want this story out there because realistically, they are the trusted sources. They are the ones that are spending big money. They are the ones that now have the control, and they don't really care about guys like us that can mess up their whole game. But for the time being, I'm at Twitter at Jason Fick. Pretty much if you search my name, I'm all over social media. At least I'm on Facebook at the time being. I'm sure that I've you know, I don't know if I'll remain there. I mean, I've gotten banned several times since this lawsuit started, but you know, realistically, what I would suggest, I mean, my website is my name, www.jasonfyk.com. The court proceedings are all on there. I've listed them all. We'll get the response up soon and a couple of the videos and so forth. Maybe we'll try to get this video hosted up there. But for the time being, I kind of got my head down low. I got to actually win this. I'm not really worried about the prestige or the media. What I'm worried about is actually fixing the problem. A lot of people out there talking heads trying to, oh, there's a big problem. Well, how about we come up with the solutions? Yeah. Let's actually fix this problem. That's what we're after.
I certainly appreciate you giving us time today to
absolutely, Tim.
And to kind of fill us in on what's going on with this, because this really is a landmark case, and it could affect all of our lives. And you know what? Here's the byproduct, the best byproduct in my opinion. Social media could go back to being what it was, and it didn't suck so much. I think for all of the good that Facebook has done, it has done an equal amount of bad. And let's just kind of try to get it back to where it was before the money, you know, the greedy, all the stuff, all that stuff happened. And I really commend you for what you're doing, Jason. I think it's fantastic. Jason, is it Fick? Fyke?
Fyk. Yes, it's pronounced Fick. Oh, well, it's okay. I sort of take it any which way.
Jason Fick has been my guest here. Jason, JASONFYK.com. I certainly will be keeping an eye on this, and I wish you nothing but luck. And let us know when we get the new book. And
one other thing I did want to push out there, Tim, real quick to everybody. It hasn't been done yet, but I'm kind of announcing it here for the first time. I am in the process of filing a 501c3 nonprofit charity. It is going to be called the Social Media Freedom Advocacy Foundation, and it will be a charity designed specifically to help lawsuits that are bringing freedom back to social media. We are going to help support people that, like myself, that are struggling. I mean, this is a war of attrition. They're trying to run me out financially. I'm on the, you know, my business is destroyed. They basically run me out of money and so forth. I'm not giving up. I mean, no matter what, even if I get no support, I'll figure this out. But the reality is that there are people out there that want to continue to have freedom on the internet and have free. And we're not talking about just free speech. We're not talking about just a conservative issue. We're talking about free market. You know, the ability to build your business and maintain your business, not to be interfered with, not to have companies decide whether you're a valuable or invaluable, you know, participant. So just keep an eye out for that too. The 501c3 will be, I may start doing some speaking events and so forth in order to raise some money. But if anybody has, you know, wants to support this cause, get in touch with me in the meantime, because this is the real deal. We are actually fighting the real fight. This isn't just about me. This isn't a movement so that I can become rich. I was already there. Now the thing is that I'm actually fighting the fight for everyone.
When you say the words Ninth Circuit and Supreme Court, I don't think anybody sneezes at those. We know you're for real.
Well, we're actually in this fight, Tim.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, I wish you nothing but continued success. God knows I'm rooting for you, and for a lot of reasons, and not just because of the business thing, but it's, in my opinion, it's the right thing to do. And thank God for people like you to stand up and actually, you know, put your neck out there and actually do this. But I will be following along, and I encourage everyone to follow you. Go to your website, follow you on Twitter and your website, and go pick up a copy of Social Justice. And we can't wait for social reform. So hurry up, get that lawsuit thing resolved.
It's coming.
Read that book.
Okay, and just remember one last thing, Tim.
Sure.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
It's become the great meme of 2019. That and the cat.
The only way to get around it now.
This is why, you know, memes were banned in Europe. You know, this is why.
Yep.
It's crazy. Yep. Jason, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim.